I hope all of you are having fantastic Fridays, final hour of the week. We'll be back on Monday, and we'll be breaking down potentially a really intriguing situation underway in the NBA Finals, because Toronto Raptors got a massive win, their first ever in the history of the NBA Finals last night against the Golden State Warriors. Pascal Siakam was the best player on the floor, going 14 of 17 from the floor. And honestly, the Warriors just looked out of sorts. They hadn't played in 10 days. They tried to bring back DeMarcus Cousins. He was out of sorts, only played 8 minutes. It's tough to hit full speed going into the NBA playoffs. Steph and Clay were just okay. Draymond Green, just okay. And the Raptors got a big win. And they are now in control of the series, up 1-0 with a chance to win Game 2 on Sunday. We have 3 more days off until Game 2 of this series will be played. So the Warriors have had an abundant amount of time off before this Game 1 was played, and they'll still have a bunch off before Game 2 is played. And I think the question out there, and certainly the narrative in the wake of Game 1, will change. And it was, since Kevin Durant's injury, the Warriors had gone out and won 5 straight games, including a closeout game against the Houston Rockets. They'd also won the second half of Game 5, a massively important game against the Rockets as well, and then swept through against the Portland Trailblazers and looked like a juggernaut, leading many people to question whether or not the Warriors are a better team without Kevin Durant. Well, now Kevin Durant, likely excited as he could be when the Warriors actually lost that game, I think he probably immediately logged into all 10 of his burner accounts and started responding to everybody out there who'd been making the argument that the Warriors were better without Kevin Durant, to make the case that, in fact, they were not. Durant on the road is there, but the Warriors look like they might need him. Now, we'll see. If the Warriors go out on Sunday, handle that game, get a win, and it's 1-1 as they head back to Golden State, there's nothing really to worry about, I would say, from a Warrior perspective. But this puts them on the precipice of trouble as we get ready for Sunday. If the Warriors lose on Sunday, it'll be the first time they're down 2 games or more since all the way back before Kevin Durant was even on the team, when they got down 3-1 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, the Warriors came back to win that series, certainly, but most of the time they've been in these series playing from ahead. It's even rare when the Warriors are tied up in a series, to be honest, because they tend to win the first couple, kind of take control of the series and not have to worry going forward. So we will see whether the Raptors can continue the performance that they put forward on Thursday night, on Sunday. But in the meantime, electric environment in Toronto, and I'm kind of stunned by this. I didn't know the answer. I always like to poll my audience. It's gotten to be a pretty good nationwide audience. What do you guys think about this story in general? And so who are you rooting for in the NBA Finals is the question that I put out for you on Twitter. Let's see, about 45 minutes ago. 7,500 people have voted so far, and 73% of you are rooting for the Toronto Raptors, which is massive. I thought maybe the Canada factor would change things. A lot of you were rooting for the Houston Rockets. There's a lot of hate out there for the Golden State Warriors. Now, I'd like to see the Warriors win. I root for dynasties typically to continue. The Raptors, to me, not a particularly likable team. It's not like I feel as if the Raptors are a beloved team that finally deserves their chance to win a championship. Like many of you, I am intrigued by this series, almost more so for what it means going forward for both Kawhi Leonard and Kevin Durant than I am by what actually takes place on the court in this series itself. And I think you can sketch out a lot of different narratives in general. But to me, if the Raptors were to continue and win this series, and I don't think they will, I'm sticking to my Warriors in 5 prediction. I think the Warriors win 4 straight here. We'll see if I'm crazy or not. But if the Raptors were to win this series, then I think Kawhi Leonard has an easy decision to make. He can bail and go to the Clippers, right? It's almost LeBron-esque when LeBron left Cleveland. Once you deliver a championship, you can go and leave, and fans still view you very fondly, even if Kawhi Leonard was only rented for a year, only fulfilled 1 year. If the Raptors win a championship, I think the people of the city of Toronto and the country of Canada will view Kawhi Leonard in a very favorable light, even if he makes a decision to go back closer to home and decided to play for the Clippers. If the Raptors don't win, I think it's tougher to lose and maintain a very likable status there, because then the Raptors will have given up everything for Kawhi Leonard, and then Kawhi will leave, and that franchise will be in rebuild mode almost immediately. So the question that's out there right now, everybody wants to say that the Raptors GM who made the decision to get rid of DeMar DeRozan and bring in Kawhi Leonard looks like a genius right now. But if the Raptors were to go on and lose this series and then Kawhi bails, is it really worth it to make a run to the NBA Finals? I think if the Raptors go on and win a title, then even if they only had Kawhi for a year, that's a trade most people would make because a championship is so rare. But if they trade for Kawhi, lose in the NBA Finals, and then Kawhi leaves, then I think that trade looks an awful lot different because effectively you gave up DeMar DeRozan for nothing, and you're back into the mix trying to rebuild your franchise without a lot of talent. So we'll see what ends up happening there with Kawhi. On the flip side, I know athletes always say, oh, it's all about the team. I'm rooting for the team. There is a 0% chance in my mind that Kevin Durant wasn't happy that the Warriors lost this game. I really firmly 100% believe that it's like when you're on the sideline and you're the backup quarterback, the quarterback who's the backup always wants the starter to not play well. That's the truth. Now, you want to win and everything else, and publicly you're going to say everything is fine, but I think it's only human nature for if you're out with an injury, for instance, and you're the starting quarterback, you'd rather the backup quarterback not play that well. Ideal scenario, they win, but the backup quarterback doesn't play that well. When you are the backup quarterback, you definitely hope at some point that the starting quarterback goes out and throws 3 interceptions and you get to replace him. That's just human nature. And so I think Kevin Durant, who has more of rabbit ears and pays more attention to what people say about him than any other top athlete I can think of. At least none of the other top athletes I can think of have been caught with burner accounts responding to critics like Kevin Durant has. I think that when you actually break it down, Kevin Durant enjoyed the Warriors losing a game because it kills the narrative of the Warriors are a better team without Kevin Durant. And in the process, it also leaves open the door for Kevin Durant to come back, riding into victory, Willis Reed style, show up potentially in Oracle, help the Warriors win this title. And then if that happens, I think Kevin Durant has a even tougher decision because if he comes back and plays well in the NBA Finals and the Warriors win this series and they've won 3 straight titles, I think it's hard for Kevin Durant to make the decision to bail at that point in time. I really do. Because I think if you look at what he would have done since getting to Golden State, why would he feel like he should go to New York? He can argue that he was an integral part in winning a championship and basically slam the door forever on whether or not the Warriors would have won a championship without him. In fact, Kevin Durant may even hope that the ideal scenario for Kevin Durant would be what? That the Raptors win game 2 as well, and the Golden State Warriors are down 2-0, and then who comes riding to the rescue with a return in game 3, and the Warriors go on and win 4 straight, and Kevin Durant plays phenomenally well. Or they go 7 games, and Kevin Durant comes back and plays phenomenally well in game 7, and everybody watching this series says, hey, you know what? Warriors wouldn't have won the title without Kevin Durant. Then I think the pressure for him to go elsewhere actually diminishes pretty severely, because then Kevin Durant is still integral and a huge part of a championship drive. Because what was trying to happen and what was starting to happen from a narrative perspective was, oh yeah, Kevin Durant, he joined a great team. Look, even when he's out, this team is still really good. They're still championship caliber. All Kevin Durant did was front run. Well, in the wake of this loss, that argument has lost a lot of its credence. So those are storylines that we are following. Personally, I don't hit the panic button on any one game that we see in a 7-game series. If the Raptors come out and win game 2, then the Warriors will really be up against it because they'd have to win 4, obviously, of the final 5 games to make it happen. Problem is, I've seen the Warriors do that. I know that the Warriors can win a series of games in a row because we've seen them do it. They went down 3-1 against the Oklahoma City Thunder, even without Kevin Durant, came back and won it in a 7-game series. The Warriors are capable of winning with their backs against the wall. So we will see exactly what transpires. I think the NBA has to be happy about the way this went because it at least interjects some drama into the NBA Finals. If the Warriors had gone out and won Game 1 against Toronto, then we'd be talking about Toronto having to win Game 2 or the series effectively being over. Flip side is Warriors now with some pressure on them as we get ready for Sunday.
This is coming from Chris Haynes of Yahoo Sports. He says, barring a setback, the Warriors are expecting Kevin Durant to return from that right calf strain at some point midway through the NBA Finals. So he's saying Game 4 would be when Kevin Durant will be back on the court.
That, if you're curious, is Friday right now. So they stretch out the NBA Finals to such an extent that we don't have Game 2 until Sunday, and then they don't play again until Wednesday, I think, right? And then they don't, let me pull this up to be sure. But they have multiple days off, essentially, which is pretty wild when you break it down, like how many days. The NBA Finals right now is set up to last 2 weeks. So, I mean, it's wild that we could go 2 weeks with the NBA Finals. But Sunday is Game 2. And then does somebody have the schedule in front of them right now? I think Wednesday is Game 3, if I'm not mistaken. And it's kind of just wild. Wednesday is Game 3, yep. And then Friday would be Game 4. So between now and Friday, you will get 3 games, but in a week. I mean, it's crazy. So that means that Kevin Durant might need another week to be ready. My bet would be, honestly, if he's going to be ready on Friday, don't you think he'd probably be ready on Wednesday when they actually get back to home in Golden State?
Yeah, because it goes on to say that there's some optimism within members of the organization that a Game 3 arrival could be viable, but Game 4 is the most logical option.
But it just seems strange that he would be ready. I mean, I understand if it's like, hey, he sprained his ankle and he's been out for 5 days, and an additional 2 days is a big part of his recovery. But it seems strange to me that he would be able to play on Friday night, but not able to play on Wednesday night. That just seems strange to me. So my bet would be if he's going to be able to play, that potentially he'll be good to go for the games returning in Golden State. Now, the problem with that in general is if you watch the way DeMarcus Cousins played, it's one thing to be able to play. It's another thing to be in basketball shape and play at a high level. So Kevin Durant having missed, when has it been out now? Like a full month, right? When was that injury that took place in the Rockets series? Feels like it was like a month ago. It was a long time ago in Game 5 that he tweaked that leg. And then they announced that he was going to be out the rest of the series against the Rockets. But it feels like a very, very long time ago now that happened. And so potentially, we certainly know that it was before the end of the, it's got to be almost a month now. So he's going to have missed a full 4 weeks by the time he comes back. But the problem is, just because you come back doesn't mean you're going to be playing at a high level. And it does potentially eliminate some of the concerns, I would think, for the Warriors, because that gives them another weapon in the arsenal. And it also puts the onus, I would say, even more so on the Raptors to need to win Game 2. I would think that the Warriors will feel a little bit better, even if they lose on Sunday, knowing that if they had Kevin Durant to rely on for the final 5 potentially games of that series.
Yeah, that injury happened back on the 8th.
The 8th of May?
Yes.
So by the time he comes back, it will be almost a full month. I mean, that's pretty crazy because we're at May 31st now, and that would be June 6th or 7th when we actually get that next game. So that's wild that he would be out nearly a full month for that injury. I would think if the report is that he's going to be back before the end of the series, potentially by Game 4, I'd expect him to play on Wednesday. And I think also the traveling gives you a sense that he's feeling better because he didn't travel for Portland, and also that his rehab is not necessarily as extensive as it was before. I wouldn't think you'd want to put him up in the air on a long flight, even with the charter flight situation, if you thought he was still aggressively rehabbing that injury.